function notation is a new form of being able to work with equations. It's a different way of viewing an equation, and some consider it to be more of a shortcut. In previous algebra, we would be told that you had y equals some equation, and then you would have to be told that x equals a certain value. Function notation takes this whole idea here and shortens it down. And it shortens it down by using what's called f of x. And that's exactly how it's read. F, the parentheses would be of, and then x. What it means is you are going to evaluate the function at whatever that x value was. So for example, you may see questions that say, find f of -3 when f of x equals -3x squared minus 2x plus 7. So what does this mean? This part right here means x equals -3. So essentially what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to take that value, and anywhere you see an x, we're supposed to plug it in. So we are looking at f of my term is equal to -3 of my term squared minus 2 something plus 7. And in this case, we are saying that x equals -3. So anywhere we had an x, we are going to input the -3. Now all we have to do is solve that down. So here we're going to have -3 times 9 plus 6 plus 7. So in the end, this is going to give me -14. So when we're talking about solutions, we are now talking about f of -3 is equal to -14. And this would be the result that we wanted. Alright, let's take a look at another one. So here we want to find 3x minus 2 when the following occurs. So again, this is saying that we're looking at f of my x being 3x minus 2. So in this case, anywhere I have an x, I have to input. So my numerator becomes -3 times the 3x minus 2. And the whole thing is going to be over 3x minus 2 squared plus 2 times the 3x minus 2 minus 4. Now from here we have to simplify. So if we just look at the top, in order to simplify, the top says this part has to come in to my parentheses in both places. So this is going to be -9x plus 6 on top. And then we have to look at the bottom. If we look at this piece right here, we have to use FOIL. Why? Because the square right here tells us that we have 2 of them. So we have 3x minus 2 times 3x minus 2. And then we have to distribute our 2 through, so this becomes plus a 6x minus 4 minus 4. Again, we're going to take this piece here and we're going to FOIL. So I have -9x plus 6 on top. 3 times 3 gives me 9x squared. Then I'm going to have 3 times 2, so -6 on the outside, -6 on the inside. So minus 12x plus 4 plus a 6x minus 4 minus 4. I need to combine my terms. So I have a -9x plus 6. And on the bottom I have a 9x squared. I have a negative 12x plus 6x gives me a negative 6x. And then I have 4 minus 4 minus 4, so minus 4. And therefore, we have finished. So f of 3x minus 2 is equal to the following. And this was the answer we were looking for. Alright, so now let's do one. Let's make sure that we really follow what it is that we're doing. So here we need to rewrite this relation as a function of f, or a function of x. So the biggest thing we have to remember here is that note y means f of x and vice versa. Okay, so it's kind of a different notation. So the first thing I would do is rearrange this in order to solve for y. So I would take this cubed root of x and I would move it first. So this gives me a negative 2y is equal to my negative 2x plus my x squared minus my cubed root of x. And I need to divide everything by 2, negative 2. So y is going to be that negative 2x plus my x squared minus the cubed root of x. Divide everything by the negative 2. And then what we can do is we can actually simplify each term. So here we would have negative 2 over negative 2 is going to give me just an x. And then I'm going to have minus 1/2 x squared. And I'm going to have plus 1/2 cubed root of x. And since the problem wants you to write it as a function of x, it means the very last thing you have to do is rewrite that this is f of x is equal to, and you can rearrange the equation however you like. I would rewrite it to say negative 1/2 x squared plus my x plus my 1/2 cubed root of x. Once you've done that, we can do the second part. The second part says we need to evaluate where x is negative 1. So here this means now we're going to look at f of negative 1, which means anywhere I have an x becomes negative 1. So this is negative 1/2 times a negative 1 squared plus a negative 1 plus my 1/2 for the cubed root of negative 1. So if we look at this first part here, so let's just look at this first piece. Negative 1 squared becomes positive 1 times a negative 1/2 means this is negative 1/2. Obviously, if we look at the second piece, we're going to have negative 1. But then we need to look at this third part. When we take the cubed root of negative 1, we end up with negative 1. And then multiply that by negative 1/2 gives me negative 1/2. So here, if we really pay attention, we have the f of negative 1 is going to be negative 1/2 minus 1 minus another half. So in the end, f of negative 1 is equal to negative 2. So here we have two solutions that we had to pay close attention to. The first solution being that we rewrote our problem as a function, and the second being that we had to evaluate that function. Okay. So that is everything you kind of need to know about the beginnings of function notation and what to expect and how it works. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.